Okay, good morning, everyone. This is the February meeting of the City of Fitchburg Public Burial Grounds meeting. And we are recording the meeting today, asking everybody to silence their phones, if you would, please. And bear with us because this is new to me, so I also am taking notes. So the meeting has started at 9:12 a.m. on February, where are we, 15, sorry, February 15.
Yeah.
It's 9, yeah, I don't know.
I'm
I
sorry,
don't know if that clock is right.
I have a watch.
Okay.
Judy time. So 2024. Okay, so the roll call today is George Marajanian, Andy Hathon, Michelle Shepherd,
Shamarazi.
Shibarathi, excuse me. And Chair Judy Perla. I don't see anybody remote. No one called in that I am aware of. Others present are
Miles.
Phil Cox, and you are
Deputy Chief of Staff.
the Deputy Chief of Staff. Okay, for the mayor. And we have Jacqueline Poria, the Cemetery Commissioner, Superintendent Nick Erickson, the DPW Commissioner. And we have Liz Murphy. And Liz is the Executive Director of the Community Development and Planning Department for the City of Fitchburg. I don't see anybody here to speak at the public forum. So we'll get to the agenda, if that's okay. Could I just ask you to shut that door?
Sure.
So we're gonna let Liz address it. I had, at our last meeting, we had discussed some ARPA funding money. Liz, if you want to scoot on over here, that would be easier for you. Hi, thank you for, okay, thanks.
Do you want me to just jump right in?
Yeah, I had sent you some questions.
Yes.
And so you could be prepared. So I'll just, I don't think I sent them out to the group. But we were under the impression that the ARPA funding laws, if you will, or rules had changed slightly. So that's why we asked you to come along and see if you could help us out here.
Sure. So all of the ARPA funding that the city has been committed.
Okay.
The rules have changed in that we have to have everything that's committed under an actual contract by the end of this calendar year.
Okay. So I guess that answers all of our questions, right?
Unfortunately, there is no ARPA money to commit to the mausoleum. It's the mausoleum, correct?
Yes,
We're talking about?
Right, yeah.
So there isn't an opportunity to fund that through that source anymore.
Yeah, and now is this money completely gone? Is it all over?
There is not going to be another round of that.
Okay.
That was really a one-time funding to address the pandemic and the recovery.
Okay. Okay, for the pandemic.
Judy, may I ask a question?
Yes, so Jacqueline.
Liz, just for clarification, it was not for the mausoleum, it was for the expansion money, because the mausoleum didn't meet the criteria. But I guess the reason and questions to bring them here was if perhaps a project doesn't follow through, would there be availability for us to potentially get some of that funding for our expansion? I think that's the question.
And I'm not exactly sure what the expansion is. So I can't speak to the eligibility of that if we're not talking about the mausoleum, but, ultimately, that would be a decision that's not made by me. So if we did have funding and that funding was, and that was an eligible use and the mayor's office, and other deciders, choose to move forward with funding that project, we have to have that project under a contract with a contractor by the end of December of this current year. So it would have to, things would have to move pretty rapidly, if it could be funded otherwise, because of that contract requirement that the Treasury doesn't have put on us. So we thought we had until 2026
Yeah.
to have everything under contract, but no. We only have until we end this, that everything's under a contract. And it can't just be a contract between like my department and yours.
No.
I wish it could.
Right. This, the expansion is part of, it's like the graves that are, that allowed that.
So there's two pieces to that. There's a historic it depends on how we're making it eligible. If we're making it eligible based on a census tract, then yes, it's probably because part of it's in, part of it's not. Right, and where it fits in with the population of low income folks, we have to, when we're doing something that we call an area benefit. So parks are generally done as an area benefit, so I think, sounds like maybe the cemetery they were looking at it in that with the same respect, so. You have to be in an area where the income, and we go by block groups and census tracts and block groups. So census tract is a big piece of land, block group is a piece within that census tract, so sometimes census tracts have 3 or 4 block groups. So you can think of the block group as the neighborhood. Census tract is kind of the bigger neighborhood. But not as big maybe as a ward, close. It sounds like maybe part of it was in one census tract that was over 51% low mod income households, and the other part was probably in a higher income census tract, so that's probably where that difference is.
Okay.
But setting census tract aside, certain things can be taken on as historic preservation. And that, well, you probably still do need to be in the census tract. We might be able to make a case if it's a cemetery that serves, I want to talk to my head rep about this one, but we might be able to make a case that the cemetery serves the entire community, and our community right now is more than 51% of my income. That would be fun, something like that. However, we get just shy of $1 million a year. So your chances of getting any more than 100,000 in any given year is pretty low. It just isn't practical to think that we could take our entire entitlement and provide it to one project.
Right.
We'd be eliminating some of the projects. So.
Right.
But you could, when you get close to having enough money and you're just a couple 100,000 away from having what you need, then we could probably look at CDBG for a portion, maybe the state's Mass Historical Commissions, they have an annual grant for historic preservation. So that one might be good for the mausoleum but it has a match requirement, so and they only give about 100,000. So as a matter of fact, there's a round right now that's due March 15th. And I was, thinking mausoleum, armory. Those are the two projects that would fit for historic preservation renovations, but unfortunately, they both have a match and you'd have to use the money. Like, we can't apply for it now if you're not gonna use that money. Right, so we have to wait until you're close to the finish line and you have a small gap, and then we can figure out how to. In the meantime, we can certainly look for other grants. I don't know of anything that, the expansion in particular, I think that's the one that we'd have the hardest time funding, other than city funding.
Sure, go ahead.
Moving back, just for clarification, when you mentioned, like a census tract, when you were
Yeah.
describing, we're talking for, forest and cemetery. Now, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but you're making it sound, at least to me anyways, that's like a neighborhood cemetery. This is a citywide cemetery. So how would that apply to a citywide cemetery as far as the tracks? I mean, this encompasses the whole area of the city.
Yeah, and I could interpret it that way. That's why I said I'd want to talk to my HUD rep, just to make sure that that interpretation, that it's citywide, would be okay with HUD. They're the source of the funding, and ultimately they approve the funds that we want.
Yeah, I think the potential confusion that they might have is just that typically it's based on where the project is happening, not necessarily everyone that uses the project. I mean, we could have a crosswalk on Mount Elam Road that's outside of a EJ area, but everyone in the city decides to walk at Cogsall and uses that crosswalk. So same deal with the cemetery. The project itself would be within the cemetery. So the question is, does HUD consider that project-based, or because the whole city uses the cemetery, it's benefiting the whole city? So
I just don't understand what a low income portion.
All of the CDBG funds, they have to have a public benefit, and generally that public benefit is to folks that are earning under 80% of the area.
How can you, I mean, it's a public cemetery, so if you're a street person, we'll say, versus somebody that makes $1 million a year, it's your city cemetery, that's where you're going,
I understand.
regardless.
So the other piece that I would need to get a little bit of information from from our HUD rep is, who is the actual beneficiary? Is it the public who goes to visit the cemetery? Is it it can't be the deceased person, I guess. It's so I would think it would be the public who goes to visit the cemetery is the actual beneficiary. So it's just that this is something that is just a part of CDBG regulations. We have to have a beneficiary. That's why a lot of the funds are going towards areas and parks that are in areas that fall into census tracts, low income folks, or moderate to low income folks. Coolidge Park is a good example of one where we consider that the area benefit to be the entire city because it's so actively used by the entire city. So we may be able to make that case that cemeteries fall into the same kind of bucket as Coolidge Park does.
Well, we do bury, I don't know how many people, but people that have no income.
Transitional assistance.
Yeah.
Yeah, the city does provide burial for these people. They have no income, they have no family. I don't know how many people we bury like that a year or over a certain given time. I don't know if that would qualify as the income portion of it.
Probably,
You're saying that the
that's probably not a big enough portion
Okay.
there, but I don't want us to get into the weeds
Right.
about it, because CDBG is gonna be such a small part, can only be such a small part of the total funding that you need.
Yeah, and the CBDG fund that you're speaking of, right now, we're already in contract with someone for the mausoleum. So the city has already put in $175,000 plus dollars, and we're at the scope of work right now. And hopefully, we might have a report today, I'm not sure on that, but we met with them recently, and they are on track with what they projected for us. And we're just waiting for that kind of soft number that they're gonna come up with the dollar figure, but we know it's gonna be around 3.5 million, it could be less. So the next piece of funding that we're gonna need from the city is like $300,000, $380,000, something around there.
To do a piece of the work.
Yeah, well,
phasing?
we're trying to phase it in they're gonna give us the project scope more or less. But we're gonna try to do it correct me if I'm wrong, everybody, Nick and Jacqueline, we're gonna try to do it in phases so that it's not such a big hit on asking for the money. We have to get the roof fixed. That's the primary focus right now, because that roof is what's causing all of the exterior and interior damage, and it's been like that since 1972. So it's really done a lot of damage.
Yeah.
And of course, with all the new regulations that we have to meet now, ADA,
Mhm.
capability, hazmat stuff, we don't know. This is what we're finding out now. But the next source of funding that we're gonna have to ask for is for that roof.
Yeah.
We've gotta get that roof fixed.
So the next source of funding that we're gonna need is to finish the design, and then it's gonna need construction funding. So we've got $100,000 that's been allocated for the existing conditions analysis. Once that's done, we need to figure out where we're gonna find the money for the rest of the design based on that existing conditions analysis. And that's estimated around 300 based on the numbers that Russ had given us.
Yeah.
And then construction wise, we'll need roughly 3.5 million, and that's, still a big question mark. So I don't think there's any source like historical preservation grants or CDBG that would give us all of that. So it's gonna need to be little pieces from a lot of different sources, I think.
Yeah. Well, we just thought we would ask you, Liz, to see if put it on your list of things to do. If you have the time to check out different things for us and get back to us, let us know what your findings are. That would be helpful.
Anytime grants come across our office that we think could be eligible, we'll let you guys know.
Okay.
And just speaking about timing, so the roof, if you have a standalone roof project, that maybe there could, if you can get a piece maybe from free cash, and then next year apply for CDBG and the historic preservation piece, 100,000 from CDBG and then the historic preservation to fill the rest of that gap. You'd have your match if you got the CDBG and maybe 100,000 from free cash or something like that. And then hopefully those two grants could help you. But we're already through our CDBG application period for this year. So you'd really be looking at filling out an application in December. That would be due in the beginning of January next year. Funds wouldn't be available till July. But that timing works well with the state's historic preservation fund too, because those, at least this year, that's due in March, that application, and then the funds get allocated and awarded in June, they say. So, so you'd be looking at the project would not happen this summer, but the next summer.
But are we in line for that though? Because I thought that isn't it our understanding that roof will be getting addressed this fall at some point?
Well, it's not gonna get addressed if we don't have the money for it. Right now, we have $0 set aside for it.
I have a question.
We haven't even finished the design yet, so until we finish the design, we can't go forward with construction, and we can't go forward with construction.
So do you feel we'd be in line, maybe?
It all depends on funding. I don't know what the current budget looks like. I don't know if there's $3.5 million that can come out of anywhere. There's probably 300,000 that can come out of somewhere
Well,
to
that's
get
what
the
I'm
design
speaking of.
complete, but
I'm speaking of that money, not the whole project funding.
yeah, I think we can get the design done this year, and I'd like to get the design done and at least, have a bid package ready to go at some point for the next year, within the next year or so.
So
if we can.
obviously, getting that roof stabilized is your critical path right now. But thinking about the whole mausoleum, developing a capital plan, once you have that, your design scope and your estimated costs,
Right.
Developing a capital plan, maybe over the course of, 5 to 7 years, a portion of free cash can be carved off and set aside every year, banked. I don't know if it could be banked, so that you could be accruing the money you need to ultimately get to the full project, or maybe some of it could be done. I'm sure once you get that information back from your designer.
Yeah, and that's what we need to understand a little bit better. So there's a lot of penetrations that come up through the roof. So I get the feeling it's not as easy as just a roof that's usually, 50, 60 grand. I think it's more the roof plus all these vents that come up through the floor and building envelope as a whole as one phase. And that might be a little bit more substantial than just.
George had a question, if you don't mind.
No, I have a question for you. Are you aware of whether the city has a list of actually foundations that were created by people who made their mark in the city, like the Wallaces, the Crockers, even Harry Dola, who established the Dola Greeting Card Company, who set up a foundation. There are illustrious people who actually made their mark in the city, who actually established foundations, who have actually given money, for different projects. Is the city aware of that, what those foundations are of those people that were established by those people?
I cannot speak for the city as a whole. I can only tell you that in my department, the only foundation I'm aware, we don't have a list. The only foundation I'm aware of is the Wallace Foundation.
All the other, but no Crocker Foundation or?
Oh, yes, the Crocker Foundation exists, yeah.
How about the Harry Dola Foundation? That was
I
a
haven't
huge.
heard of that, but,
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like it would be a worthy effort to put together a list of
Yes.
the foundations.
I think it'd be worth actually looking and seeing what foundations were established by people who lived here, made their mark here, and actually have donated hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years, to the city.
Sacred mausoleum,
What?
those that are in.
And some of them are actually entombed in the mausoleum. Yeah, they're interned in the mausoleum.
Well, that does sound like it would be leveraged.
The Simon's family, I mean, there's a whole number of families,
Is that, would that be, if we gave you a list or found the foundations, would that be something that you could look into for us? Or, because it's my understanding we can't do it
No.
as trustees because we're city employees. So we can find a list, obviously, with the names of people, but we can't,
Right,
we can't,
make contact.
yeah, we can't contact them, we can't write letters to them, we can't ask for help. That particular cemetery, as well as like the Laurel Hill Cemetery, which is not an active cemetery anymore, there are a lot of founding members of the Fitchburg city of Fitchburg residents that founded the city that are buried there.
Yeah.
And we know their foundations and trusts are still out there, but is there any way that this department could get a little bit of that, I guess?
So, I'm not aware, and I guess I'd wanna look a little bit further into why you couldn't connect with those,
Well, it's been our understanding because we're technically city employees, permanently. You get paid, we don't.
I would think, any sort of request that, that goes to one of those foundations, a lot of these foundations, they actually have formal application processes.
Yeah.
So my office would, if we were going to assist, I think we would work with, yes, your superintendent, to submit something together with really the superintendent, of cemeteries being the applicant. City, our department would be supporting that process, with our skills. Perfect.
Okay, oh, okay, well, then it's, yes.
I didn't want to interrupt, but I
No, go
just
right ahead.
wanted to, do you offhand remember, from the package for the expansion across the street, the design package? Like, wasn't it 2017 that it was last like revised? Because I know they started it in like.
I think it was 2018, that we received the packet from Ray Dunnets and, it's just a matter of, when we move forward. Nick and I think need to meet with the mayor on that.
Right, well, that's what I was just gonna say, is to make it official, because maybe the mayor, I know, maybe she wasn't in the area at the time that might have come up in city council meetings, I'm assuming, to have paid for that design. It must have gone through the city perhaps, I don't know.
Well, Mr. Dunst had presented the trustee board with the plans, and he gave us a video of it, slide presentation of it. And we were ready to go before the mayor, or not the mayor, but the city council with it. Just as an informational thing, this is what we've got, this is what we're planning, and it's not now, it's for the future. And that's when the former mayor asked how many graves were still left and what was the longevity of the cemetery as it stood then.
Right.
And I think you said about 5 to 7 years at that point.
Correct.
So we were asked to hold that.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure the mayor's office was aware of the design and the budget.
Well,
And all.
being a new administration, I don't,
Well, that's what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
think it's an important document. So when I first started here, in 2020, it was overwhelming to see the scope of that project. And personally, I'm not even sure it's an ideal site because of ledge. But that, aside from that, there's, you know, a design on the table with a budget that I'm sure is probably twice as much now than it was back then when it was estimated. And so it's something that someone really needs to at least have reviewed and understand what it's all about. So it isn't just like us. And then the other thing I just wanted to say is, and I can't remember if we resolved this before, but our charge is really maintenance of what exists now. And you know, whether it's the mausoleum and the actual cemeteries, and that we're managing and approving funds that are distributed from the accounts, you know, bringing it to our attention that we have to pay for fencing or what have you. And that, correct me if I'm wrong, it isn't our responsibility to be creating a new cemetery. That is not managing the funds, managing maintenance. The mausoleum obviously exists, but I just wanted someone to, you know, maybe finally define our role. And that is the city's responsibility to create a cemetery to bury the dead that are, by law, they have to. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands our official role, and if our role in reality, if our role on paper doesn't match reality, it has to be rectified.
And that's a conversation we need to have.
Yeah, well,
I think, and
the trustee, basically the trustees, in the definition of trustees of the public service cemeteries, is just that we watch the money, more or less. I believe over time, they always had, I think it's in our charter or in our ordinances or something, that there is a committee that does that. And I don't know how active they were in the past. I couldn't tell you that. I've been a part of the Friends of the Historic Cemetery Committee. We were a volunteer group, and we did a lot of fundraising. We worked with Sally Cragen and her players, the Stratton players,
yeah.
and they did functions. Joy, help me out, Joy Fontos at one time. We did cemetery tours. We explained who was buried there. It was very profitable. It was a donation type of thing.
I think I remember
Remember
those.
that? Yeah, and so we had about 20 or so, 20, 30 people. We went in and helped out with flag placement, raising markers. We did a lot of volunteer work, repairing some of the stone walls in Laurel Hill Cemetery. I remember Joel Caddy and got a crew and an excavator up there. So the volunteer group did a lot of volunteer work. It disbanded over time. People lost interest, people got older, that kind of thing, as most volunteer groups do. So we haven't established a new one. But again, it was just to do some of the maintenance work. And we did fundraise a little bit. We built
Information site.
what is it?
Information.
Oh, the information booth, where we have our information at Forest Hill. We got new signage at some of the cemeteries, Laurel Hill. They clean up the grave. Well, the crew, you know, the cemetery crew does a lot of that anyway. But we, just as volunteers, we helped out as much as we could. Then I've been on the board for 6 or 7 years now, as a member. I came on, at least 7 years ago. And, so basically we're watching the money. At some place along the line, way back when speaking about mausoleum right now, the mausoleum had a perpetual care fund that got drained. So 100 years ago, it only has $3,000 in it. And when I inquired with the city auditor at the time, of course, he couldn't account for it. He didn't know. I mean, he'd have to see if he could research minutes and things like that. But at some point along the way, that fund got dipped into, and so the perpetual care fund for the mausoleum is just like $3,000 or $4,000, if it's even $4,000. So if it had been there all this time, I'm sure it would have approved some.
Yeah,
Money.
Was it set up initially as like an endowment where there was a lump sum that was
Yes,
incurring interest
yeah.
and then that interest is what you were,
Yes,
you're only supposed to take the interest and let the principal keep.
I believe so, yes,
Yes.
$500, I believe was the initial,
I don't remember. off the
yeah,
top
I
of
think
my
something
head.
around, only about $500. But the fund, the endowment fund was established at the time the mausoleum was built and dedicated. So again, so the role of trustees is just to kind of watch the money, where are you spending the money, why are you spending the money, how much money are you spending? And then, of course, you know, the rules and laws change over time, and so,
Can I
Yes.
speak to that a little bit? So
Sure.
just what Michelle brought up, so it's pretty clearly defined in the city code what the
Right.
role of the trustees is. So I'll read the section that's most applicable. Board of Trustees for public burial grounds shall have the right to make expenditures of appropriations made by the council for the construction of paths and avenues in such cemeteries and public burial grounds, and for the planting of and embellishing them with trees, shrubs, flowers, and other rural ornaments, or any other purpose of construction, maintenance, or improvement therein. So I don't think that the role of the trustees is singularly focused on maintenance, or singularly focused on managing the money, or singularly focused on construction of new cemeteries. I think it's a little bit of all of the above.
Yeah.
So Michelle, to your point, I think trustees have direct control over how the money in perpetual care is spent, how the maintenance of the cemetery is performed, and future expansion of the cemetery. So I think there's a heavy role in kind of both the maintenance and future expansion.
Question,
Well,
I'm sorry, but where in that, what you just read to us? Maybe I missed it. Does it say that we have anything to do with, we'll say, purchasing a new cemetery or creating a new cemetery? If we're just in charge of the maintenance of it? Once it's in
It also
established?
reduces our role significantly, the way he just read it, so.
I mean, it basically says have the right to make expenditures of appropriation, et cetera, for construction, maintenance, and improvement therein. So that's,
But I think that's talking about existing property.
Yeah, construction would be like the mausoleum, I mean, what we're doing right now, could that fall under the heading of
it's
construction?
construction, maintenance, or improvement.
Yeah.
The expansion is considered an improvement.
an expansion would be an
Construction.
improvement. I mean, we're,
Well, we don't have the money.
oh, no, of
No,
course
I'm
not.
just saying, you know, I can see with the city council, you know, they're dealing with far greater funds than we are. And, where that would fall into their purview, rather than ours, you know, I can see once, if we ever get a new one, where, you know, the duties of the board would be to, okay, now, here it is, we paid for it, you take care of it.
I just want to just interject for just a moment if I can. Liz has to leave at approximately 1 minute. She has another meeting somewhere else. So I'd like to just finish up with her if we can. We can discuss it further if you'd like. But I think pretty much you've kind of answered the questions that, you know, I had presented to you. And if you can, like you said, if you can keep your eye on things for us and let us know, work with Jacqueline through Nick, that sort of stuff. And as far as the cemetery trustees role, I just want to say that I don't know how it was done in the past. I'm only 29 years old, so I have no clue. But the past was the past. So we have to deal with what we have in front of us now. And everything always changes, money changes, legislation changes, administrations change. We have to be an advocate, as Lynn Spencer said the other day at our meeting. We speak for the people. So as trustees, it's our duty to present what we find, to present the fact that we need a new cemetery, whether we have the funding or not. That's with all projects. We're gonna find the money somehow. What are you gonna do with these people? What are you gonna do with the people that are already buried in that mausoleum? It's far more expensive to try to exhume them and put them somewhere, which is, you'd never be able to do. So we have 2 projects going on right now, the mausoleum and the expansion. Those are our goals. So just so anybody knows, that anybody else out in the public viewing audience has any suggestions, ideas, please let us know, come to our meeting, email us, and help us out.
Can I have one thing?
Yes, you may.
I believe the, current administration is gonna start having capital improvement committee meetings again.
I heard that this morning.
This
Yeah.
would be a really good, both these projects should be on that list of the capital improvement needs.
Okay.
So I'm sure that Nick will.
Use, right? I would assume that the, DPW commissioner through the cemetery superintendent, that they would be invited to those meetings.
I would assume that's the
Yes.
case.
Okay, that's the way it is. Okay. So if you can just keep them informed, Miles, that would be helpful. Thank you, Liz, very much for
You're welcome.
coming.
Thank you. It's
And
a pleasure to meet all of you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions or discussion on that matter?
I just wanted to make sure that the city, the new mayor's office, the city, everyone maybe now needs to look at some viewing audience now that it's being shown. We probably won't.
Yeah,
But it's important for everyone to understand that it's a citywide issue. It isn't this little board, that's all. And I feel like sometimes, maybe because I'm too sensitive, but I have often felt that it's our responsibility to, fight and advocate for the dead, which it is our responsibility to advocate for them, but really the momentum isn't coming from this committee. It's a city issue. And I think we all know that, but the line's been blurred and we go to bed at night worrying about it, but it's a city issue. So we're here for support, we're here to advocate, but it's something that has to be put back on, the new administration and for the whole city to understand what we're going through. Besides the mausoleum.
One other quick thing, not to belabor
okay, I'm
the
gonna
issue.
give you 2 minutes.
No, don't even take that, but we're all saying like this committee, charge of expansion of the cemetery. We've already expanded the cemetery. This is a new cemetery. Now, maybe I'm splitting hairs, but would that still be considered expansion? Or would that be considered something new? How did we deal with it when Laurel Hill got, put out a commission versus opening, Forest Hill? Was that new or just an expansion of Laurel?
It was a new cemetery. I think the concept, with the, master plan was Forest Hill, and that would be an extension of Forest Hill. The land is already owned, by the city, but it is deemed cemetery land already, so we don't have to go through that process.
Which brings me to the next point was I was gonna make, was if we can't, because of topography or whatever the case may be, on that site, build, if we ever got that done. And we did have to go to an alternate site someplace else within the city. Now, is that considered still an expansion? Do we lose the funds? If we had funds for an expansion and have to start all over again for a new piece of property, or how does that work?
If there is a miraculous piece of land out there, obviously it is, very costly to develop the expansion because of the topography in that area. But if there was another piece of land, you would have to go through the process of, through the state and deem that cemetery land. It's a process to do that. It would be a new cemetery, yes,
It
it
would
would.
not be an expansion.
It would not be an expansion, no.
To answer the question, who benefits by the major cemetery in Pittsburgh, or in all the cemetery, is the survivors of all those who are buried. And if you were to count all the living, who are not only living in this area, but in the country or around the world, we're talking actually living survivors. You know what the numbers would be as far as who benefits? It's actually, it's hundreds of thousands, if not millions. If you count all the people who are survivors of those who are buried here, it actually would probably number in the millions. If you count all the survivors of those who are buried. So those are the beneficiaries, and the city maintains that for the benefit of the families of those who are interred in the cemeteries. So I think that's a major thing, that the city, the residents, not only the residents of the city, but those who live elsewhere, who have their ancestors are buried here, they benefit by their internment year for the cemetery. So I just point out that the public has to realize there is a benefit to millions, actually millions. You count all the survivors, of these elderberries.
Okay,
I'm not, yeah, sorry, hold on, I'm not familiar with anything that would prevent you from looking into funds as, just members of the board of trustees and burial grounds. I don't think a volunteer city employee would prevent you necessarily from doing that. So I think what George is saying, if you are to do some work looking into grants and you need to find beneficiaries, listing the public.
There could be beneficiaries who actually have,
Right.
are well endowed, have found those, Well, I'd like to know, that's all we need to know. I mean, who's out there that can help us?
So, I think that is within your purview to do, is to look into funds, and we can do that too, but I don't believe there's something that prevents the board from looking into grant opportunities and things like that.
I think Judy was talking about soliciting,
soliciting.
but they have grant applications that
Yeah,
it's
right.
not soliciting, I don't think. Is it?
Yeah,
Well, no, I think we were,
but we have to know who they are. We have to know,
just going on memory, from previous conversations about this particular item, about soliciting funds, contributions, donations, that type of thing. I believe we were instructed that because we are city workers, even though we're a volunteer group, we're not on the payroll, we cannot legally. Okay, so that is what I'm speaking about. So if you want to look into that, I believe, and maybe Jeff.
Well, ask him when you.
Didn't the city solicitor tell us that at one point? I can't remember.
I don't recall,
I'll
possibly.
Okay.
we'll check in
You'll
and
check
get an
into
update
that
for
for us.
you.
Okay,
And
that's,
well, we
listen,
can engage in these contracts. We,
No,
that's a
no,
body,
right.
but
it's,
the solicitation of funds
Yes,
is
yeah.
something that it was our understanding, previous boards' understanding, that we could not, like, I couldn't write to the Wallace Foundation. I think.
No.
I'll check
Okay.
back in and get a firm answer for you.
Thank you. Okay, we can move along. We'll check on. So right now, we're on, I need,
I was gonna say, should we do this, the minutes?
yes, that's next on the agenda, is the approval of January 18th minutes. And if you all had a copy of the minutes.
I make a motion, we accept.
Okay, a motion made by Andy to accept the minutes. I need a second.
well, I'll second it, but I'd like actually to make an amendment, make a motion to amend it, or for a correction.
A correction on the minutes?
Now, if you look at the minutes, it's just by the memory,
You want,
I know what it is. I think Andy's last name has a missing E. It's written a half.
Oh, that's
Hawthorne without the
probably-
E. So.
W,
Hawthorne with an E. Hawthorne,
H-O-R-N-E.
yeah.
E on the end
E
here?
at the end.
Okay, that was
It's
my
just a minor,
mistake.
yeah.
I wonder if
Spell
we can
correct.
get funds.
Okay,
Yeah, exactly.
so
So I make the motion to approve the minutes as amended.
okay,
It says it.
so George. Correction. And you seconded. I need a favor, a motion, any discussion on the motion? No, motion. Okay, Michelle will abstain because she wasn't present. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. All right. And now we'll have the superintendent's report. Jacqueline, you all have a copy Jacqueline provided this morning.
I'm gonna have to apologize to the board. I have to apologize to the board. I have to leave now because I have a cardiology appointment in Sterling, so I
Okay.
can only move myself to an hour here, so I'm sorry.
Are you leaving?
I'm leaving now, but you still maintain a quorum here.
We have a quorum, yes.
Okay, so my apologies for having to leave, but the cardiologist awaits me, yeah, so,
Dr. O'Connor,
yeah,
Dr. O'Connor.
Dr. Wilson, yeah.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Okay, we'll see you next time.
All right, see you next month.
All right.
So, Jeff, you have a floor.
Okay, basically, just to highlight here, we're in, winter mode with, taking a little extra time with the frost blanket and getting the grades set. But we have been super slow, as you can see, we've only had two interments.
I know.
We have a lot of, cremated remains that are, waiting until springtime, but I've been meeting with the families, so there's a lot that, is gonna hit in the spring here for us. As far as, what's going on here, the light position has been posted. We have a lot of applications, reviewing them, and we'll be interviewing in the next few weeks to fill that position. I've been working with engineering about the water issue in section Q and the future columbarium area that I do the expansion for the columbarium. We have 8 niches left, but there is some standing water right where we proposed to put those units. So engineering has come up with a potential fix with some drainage here in those 2 areas. Unfortunately, the cost of that drainage is about $58,000. So that might impact our budget in asking for a little bit more to get those 2 areas so they're not wet.
Are you speaking about where the existing columbariums are now?
Right behind it.
Where we're gonna put the new one?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to get rid of that water first.
That be deemed an emergency?
No. No, it's just something that we need to take care of before we do an expansion there. The other thing I've done is I've ordered 2 more benches for Memorial Gardens area. I already have one family that wants the bench. It's about a 6 to 8 month journey for it to come over here and to put in place. So I have 2 more on the way for that area.
Could ask what the cost of them are? The family's picking up the tab, but I'm just curious.
I was gonna say that the cost that the family's paying is $2,500. And the cost of the benches went up significantly. They're about right around 2 or a little over 2, and then we have to put the foundation in. So, yeah. And that's basically, unless you have any questions on.
Does anybody have any questions on Jacqueline's report? Okay. Then I'd need a motion to accept the superintendent's report, please.
Make a motion, we accept?
Thank you. I need a second.
I can second.
Michelle, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Jacqueline. Okay, there's nothing. All right, an update on Forest Hill Abbey, the mausoleum from the Spencer Group. I did send out we had a virtual meeting, was held on February 6th at the DPW office. And Petros Davos, who is the OPM from Answer Advisory, was on the Zoom call, along with the Spencer Preservation Group, Lynn Spencer, who's the Principal Historic Preservationist, Doug Manley, who's the Principal Architector, Mary Bluth, I believe it was Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't it Mary? The other lady who handles the purchasing.
I think it was Mary.
Yeah, okay, it does say Project Manager of Public Procurement, okay. I didn't quite catch her name when she said it. Anyway, and also Nick Erickson from the DPW Commissioner, Jacqueline Poirier, the Cemetery Superintendent, myself, Judy Pearl, the Chair of the Trustees of the Public Burial Grounds. So just briefly, Jacqueline will be the contact person going forward now that Russ Karlstad is no longer employed by the city of Fitchburg as a facilities manager. And,
Her name was actually Deborah.
Deborah Meyer.
oh, sorry, Deborah, I'll correct that. Is it the last name correct?
Deborah Marai.
Oh,
I think
okay,
that's how you pronounce it.
Deborah. I'll check, I think I have it on my sheet, yeah. Okay, Deborah, I'll change that. In the absence of Russ Karlstad, who was our contact person with the Spencer Group and with Davos, Petros, they'll go through Jacqueline and Nick for the contact people going forward. So this week, they were supposed to come, I believe that's what this picture is on the back of Jacqueline's, is this,
Yeah, it's actually on January 23rd when they were doing their initial assessment.
okay.
That was the initial assessment of the roof, and because the roof is not clear of snow,
No, yeah.
we haven't been able to schedule them to come and do a roof cut yet. And we still have snow up there. The big pines that are on the back side of the building really shade it. And so it wasn't clear when we came in on Monday too. So we're keeping an eye on it, and as soon as it's clear, we'll be in touch with them for them to be able to do the roof cut.
Right, so that was my next paragraph, was that they were gonna organize a day and time to come to do the roof cut.
You might get some warm weather towards the end of next week, some rain, so maybe that'll melt
Yeah.
it enough that they can come do the work they need to do.
And then they did speak about the battleground surveying was done by Feldman with a laser scanner of the building and around the front steps. These were just my notes, so they're probably not as accurate as they should be, but I have to decipher my handwriting. So the Lynn Spencer, who is the principal on the project, one of the principals, the major problem is the roof. There's 24 vents and 14 drains on top of the roof. The drains carry the water from the roof into the building and then out through the drain pipes. The building has caused the water to penetrate the concrete. The iron rods are rusting inside the building. The limestone's very porous. The flashing membrane on the roof is flapping. And they'll repair all the stonework on the roof at the same time that the roof gets repaired. So basically what they were talking about, and maybe Nick, you can clarify better than I, when they looked on top of the roof with their scanner, there are these vents. And then there are drains that go into the drain pipes. Our drain pipes were all stolen, they're all gone now. So there's no drain pipe, the water just pouring off the roof.
Downspouts.
The downspouts, thank you. They were taking their copper downspouts and somebody walked away with them. For 100 years, they were there and no one touched them. And now all of a sudden, all 6 of them are gone. So that's creating more problems because now the water has nowhere to be directed.
I think I read that they were gonna be replaced with copper clad aluminum. I was
Yeah,
thinking,
so
maybe make it not look like aluminum at all. Maybe people, someone in their haste would just think, oh, wow, they're back. I'll cut them off again.
well, yeah, so further down, I'll let Nick address this and Jacqueline, and then I'll just finish what I wrote for my notes. So the steel bars at the back of the building that are holding the stained glass windows, so when you go into the mausoleum front door, above the front door, there are the stained glass windows. Well, to the back of the building, there are stained glass windows that you can see from the inside, but somehow they're blocked from the back side outside. And those bars, they looked at and they're all, I don't know, if they're rusting or they're,
Yeah, they're all rusting. So the stained glass itself was in good shape, but
Yeah.
the support rods that
Right.
fasten the window to the actual structure were all rusted out. And I think one of the issues too is that the stained glass is very close to the level of the roof. So when snow mounds up over there, it basically sits over that seam around the window and it causes water to seep in and rust those rods out. So there were two awnings that were constructed at one point over both of the stained glass areas. One is still there and one was removed at some point. So there's water issues where the one was removed. The one that still remains actually is doing a good job of protecting the window, but it doesn't show off the stained glass because no light's really getting in.
right. She did talk about maybe, putting some type of artificial lighting or backlighting on that stained glass area, just to illuminate it. I mean, we don't know, we'll see how things go. She also said the tombs inside, the marble doors, the marble does not have a lot of settling. There's some that have settled, but not a lot of them. The marble can be reset. The windows are copper. The terracotta blocks are actually a good thing because they're fireproof. And then in 2015, the roof was done. It was a poor job. The water is coming in through the vents of the roof. The vents might have to be used as fans. They're talking about maybe eliminating some of the venting, which was, I think, designed initially to keep the flow of air for, the decomposing of, the smell and all that stuff. So they're thinking maybe they might have to put in a fan type of vent instead of an open vent, right? On the open.
Yes, it's sort of a mechanically vented system versus the open air system that's currently in there. And that's just one of the options that they're considering at this point. So I think once they finish their analysis, they'll figure out a couple different options and approximate costs and then come back to us and then we'll have to make the decision whether we want to, go with option 1, 2, 3 or whatever many.
Out of curiosity, if they go with their ventilation system as you described, are they talking exposed ductwork?
I don't think they've gotten that far into the design yet. They haven't really talked about that
I mean, if
too
we're
much.
trying to preserve the originality of it,
Yeah,
kind of funny with aluminum ductwork.
yeah, I agree. I think we want to try to preserve it instead of turn it into a modern looking building. So avoiding any sort of ductwork and, modern looking stuff inside would detract from the overall building.
Lynn Spencer, she's the historic preservationist, so she's very, very good at and wants to continue to keep as much of the historic value of that building as it is. I mean, that's her forte. So to modernize it, in any way, I don't think that's on her, what she's thinking about, but we're trying to address the water. That's basically what it is. And there's some things that they're still in the design phase of all of this, correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
they're still in the
Yeah.
data
So
gathering phase. They're not even in really the design
Yeah.
phase. So
And this roof cut, they're going to take a portion or a piece of, my understanding is of the masonry, so that they can determine what type it is, and then they're gonna fill in the cracks once they do the roof.
yeah, they want to get a couple samples of the roof itself to figure out how many layers are there, what type of adhesive was used to make sure that it doesn't contain asbestos and all that stuff.
Yeah, so it just,
It's inside, made out of.
I believe it's concrete with rebar.
Because I was gonna say, back in those days, they used to build that. I noticed what's Pittsburgh, the old buildings up there, industrial buildings. It looks like cement.
it is cement, she said that.
Well, I was gonna say, it's asbestos.
She said it's.
It could be, I think that's what they're gonna test for.
It's cement with the rebars, because I made the comment that my garage ceiling, which is the floor of the garage, but then there's a basement, is the same thing. It's that rebar and then
Concrete rebar.
the big concrete that was put over it And she did mention that, so.
Yeah.
Overall, they didn't think it was in bad shape. It's more the water from the roof that's causing all of the interior damage and then leaking, around the outside of it. I wanted to,
Engineering question,
pardon me? Andy?
how, would it be feasible just going forward in the future? If we're gonna spend this much money on a roof, to put like a sub-roof with a pitch,
I think that's what they're talking about doing over the stained glass areas at least. And that's where I think most of the water damage is happening.
Mhm.
So they looked at both of those existing awnings, one that was removed a couple of years ago, and the one that's still there. The one that's still there is actually doing what it was intended to do, and I think they like that configuration versus where it was removed. You can see the outline of where it was, and that's where there's a heavy concentration of water damage. So they're talking about putting both of those back. Both of those are typical pitch sections of the roof. But they also mentioned that the roof that's on there is a membrane ballasted roof. So it's a rubber membrane essentially with like stones basically weighing it down. They mentioned that that's an outdated technique, outdated roofing style. So they were surprised that back in 2015, whatever contractor we used went with that type of design. So I think there's some sort of more modern, application of roofing that they'll go forward with.
Anybody else have any questions about or wanna have any input? No, how's that? Okay. I was just gonna mention, and I don't know when you had your meeting with the mayor, about the budget the other day. I don't believe she has, would you know if she has any of the documentation that we have from the Spencer Group?
I'm not sure if she has any of that, but we actually haven't met with her for cemeteries yet.
Oh, you
That's
haven't?
coming
Okay.
Friday.
Okay.
We've met for water and wastewater so far, but
Okay.
not cemetery, streets or parks. That's all.
I was wondering if you thought it would be permissible to give her this documentation that was given to us?
Yeah, I mean, when we go through the budget, we'll go through that capital section that has the costs associated with this project. And I think it would be good to have those documents to show her what that 3.8 million that we're asking for is.
Right,
comprised
and
of.
what we've already done so far, because it's listed on here, the monies that, the 75,000.
Yeah.
Which is what they're doing right now.
Which document is that? Is that the one that Petra sent out most recently?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's the most recent, I have a little schematic here, this one,
Okay.
but it doesn't have pricing
The
on it.
original tax.
Welcome to send any of that along to us too, I mean.
Oh,
of course,
I'll let
Nick can
them,
definitely bring it up and go over it.
Yeah, I'll let Nick-
The budget talk, of course. but
Right.
You can. send it
Well,
along
it's
to us if you want.
for a visual, I'm a visual person, so,
Okay, that'll work.
do you have
I
it?
have that one, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can make sure that Sam has that.
Yeah. Well, we were dealing with, Russ, obviously, through Nick and Russ, so
Yeah.
he had all this stuff, so.
Sure, yeah, well, I'm sure they can handle that, but you're welcome to send it along if
Yeah.
you want us to add it specifically, then.
Well, I'll have Nick handle that if you don't mind, okay?
Yeah.
'Cause he knows what he's talking about.
I'll send it to you
Yeah,
guys.
okay, thank you. All right, so moving along, just the update on the rules and regulations for approval and posting. They were, Jacqueline had gone through them and she gave us the new ones here. There was just some verbiage that we wanted either added or taken out, I guess, or something.
Yeah, you wanted it added, it's number 8 under recreational
Yeah.
activities.
Yeah. Yes, okay. Yeah, wanted the bicycle, let's see, what is the,
You wanted to add no recreational activities are allowed in any of the following cemeteries: Laurel, Dean, West, South,
yeah,
Alpine, and Hartwell,
right,
without written consent from the cemetery superintendent.
right, okay,
So that was added.
thank you. That was the only one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, so and did you post them on the website?
Upon your.
Oh, that's right, okay, so we need to, thank you for helping me out here. So if I can just get an approval on the rules and regulations that were submitted.
motion we approve, that is right.
Okay, Andy, thank you, and I need a second. I'll second it, I think I can second it. All in favor of the motion? Okay, thank you, the motion passes. So Jacqueline will send these over to the clerks and they'll get put onto our website, the new rules and regulations. Meeting minutes. And then I think I gave you all, I sent just the budget review that we had a subcommittee meeting on February 6th. Just briefly, and please, Nick and Jacqueline, correct me because I probably got it wrong. But just from my notes, it was held February 6th at the DPW office on Broad Street. It convened at 10:08 a.m. Nick Erickson, the DPW commissioner, Courtney Lamoureux, and I don't have Courtney's title.
She's the DPW business manager.
DPW business manager. Thank you. Jacqueline Poria, the cemetery commissioner, and myself, Judith Pearl, the chair of the trustees, and George Marajanian. And the others present were Christopher Warner. Overall, the budget seemed in line with the increases in labor costs and the maintenance costs. The mausoleum renovations of 3.5 million is a rough estimate at this time. An additional line item for ground penetrating scan for the Forest Hill section of the cemetery has been added to the budget of about $300,000. The items under the title of the cemetery capital, kind of like a wish list of items, we're hoping will get funded. And DPW commissioner will be meeting with the mayor with this budget, and he'll have an update. So you want to add anything to that?
No, I'll come prepared next meeting to let you all know how the meeting with the mayor went. Just based on meetings last week for water, wastewater, we went through line by line, answered all the questions that were asked about how monies are spent, what these line items are for and all that. So we'll do the same with cemeteries, parks and streets.
We didn't get an updated version of the budget. Did you put in she was gonna put the line item?
Yeah, Courtney did update those.
She did that, and I need to just connect with her, and I did via email before tomorrow. It was just some items that Ryan was giving me that
We were just
need
going to
add.
The paving.
Yeah, so it'll be updated one more time before tomorrow,
Okay, so,
and then we'll give you an update next time.
okay,
Yeah.
at next meeting.
Ask a question about this.
Sure.
Looking at it. Under here, it's got mausoleum interior repair. And fiscal 20, we got 25,000. Fiscal 23, I don't know if we got it, but they put in for 100,000. But now where we are actually addressing the building, how come we didn't put in for, is that all inclusive into the project?
That, well,
Or would
This-
it behoove us to go for this too, just in case the project falls through? At least we get some capital to work with for the mausoleum.
And right now, it's all built into the other mausoleum line item.
Yeah.
The way the budget works is the line items don't drop off until, I think 5 years have elapsed since the last expenditure. So that's why you see that mausoleum interior is still on there, because at some point within the last 5 years, we spent money on the mausoleum interior specifically. We could split that out and ask for mausoleum exterior and mausoleum interior and have it in two different budget line items, but that might just cause a little extra confusion. That's not really
Yeah.
100% needed.
we sort of discussed that, I think, in our meeting that we had on the budget, and I mean, it's a shocker when you look at the price. We did reduce the mausoleum renovations from the 4 million, because we were told 3.5 to 4 million. We don't have a hard number on it yet. We discussed putting another line item of 300,000 for the ground penetrating scan
Yeah, that's for the section over by Mount Elam and Rollstone, that corner there where we've got the potential to install double stacked vaults, but there's potential for high bedrock there. So we want to perform ground penetrating radar to get an understanding of the ledge profile there, and then put together construction documents to hire a contractor to actually come in and install those double stacked vaults. But until we know what that ledge profile is, it's a big question mark. So if we go out to bid for that, a contractor is not going to have the certainty that they need to give us a good competitive bid price. So the more unknowns that we can help clarify prior to that bid process, the better price we're going to get. So that's the goal there. So that $300,000 would be to do the ground penetrating radar, plus put together a bid package, go out to bid and just get that work done. Ground penetrating radar itself is usually a per day cost. I would anticipate like $3,000 per day times 2 or 3 days max out there. So you're talking a small fraction of that just for the ground penetrating radar. The rest of it more to be to put together construction documents, go out to bid, hire the contractor, get them in there to excavate and install those vaults. And that $300,000 is a very rough number. And it, that would at least get us to the point that we could get the project done this year.
Was he in charge of the contractor, in charge of the actual vault? Or do you have to get a vault company involved in that? I mean, the contractor just digging a hole and then a vault company comes in and does the vault?
I think
Or is it the contractor one?
I think
Not
the
sure.
way we bid it out would probably be to have the contractor that's selected to furnish and install the vaults. So they're responsible for digging the holes, sourcing the vaults, installing them, backfilling, finish grading and all that stuff.
Are there any, to your knowledge,
Yes, there is. There actually, when I was trying to figure out, the double deck vaults and, what type we would use and would be the best for the cemetery, there is a contractor out there that I spoke with about what is the cost of the vault and, he puts it in, puts the drainage, puts the soft sand.
just a poured vault or is it,
I think they're precast.
Yeah, they're precast.
So they'll come in and they'll just, they'll put down a nice crushed stone bed, they'll set it on top of the crushed stone, then backfill it with nice sand. So it's got a sturdy foundation and it's not gonna settle over time and all that.
Yeah, there's like a shelf that goes in between the two vault cavities, that the first one in is just on the bottom always. It's the same thing at the Veterans Cemetery in Washington.
I forget, exactly this project, how many graves do you get out of doing that in that area?
That's what we don't know. We don't know. We know that there is ledge that runs behind the office, up the road. And then when we started digging in that section, we ran into like the size of this table boulder. And so we're not sure. So like Nick was saying, we need to see what's down there to see if it's even advantageous to move forward with this. Yeah.
I think there's the potential to get a couple hundred graves there if we're double stacking the vaults, but it depends on how expensive it's going to be, how much ledge is there. I mean, if it's solid bedrock from, a foot down and beyond that, then that might be cost prohibitive. Because someone would have to come out and, hammer out all that ledge, and that's really, really expensive to do that.
are we talking right here at the corner of,
It's Clifton.
yeah,
And,
in that area there?
Yeah.
I don't, now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I forget somebody on the board at one point, they mentioned that that was a backfill area for the city where they used to dump all their, like if they were digging, create a street or something. That's why you were running in the boulders and whatever,
Yeah, that area is backfilled, section Q, where we're currently in with all that water, that was used as a
I was gonna
backfill.
say,
And Memorial Gardens, because there's all different layers
I
of
mean, do you
soil,
consider that
almost
ledge
all
or
four pillars.
just,
It could be ledge, you'll be able to see that on the ground penetrating radar, whether it's actual ledge or if it's just big boulders, and you get a better sense of where they are, how big they are, and all that
given
stuff.
quarry years ago, was just.
Yeah.
Kinda.
Park Hill itself was a big sand pit, and at one time it was, a little bit more hilly than it is now, and it was all flattened out, and some of the sand was pushed into the depression where Memorial Gardens is. When we dug down, we actually found about 10 feet of sand, and then an organics layer, which was the original ground surface, And that's where all the water was sitting. It was like right on top of that organics layer. You could see a former stream bed and all that. So it's kind of neat. It's like a little archaeological excavation.
Well, we, personally, I don't like spending the money, but I mean, there's no way of knowing until you do something like that. And with the new applications of these scanners that can see, into the ground, I mean, to me, that's money worth spending. Then you either know you can do it or you can't do it, right?
Right.
And then you just go from there. But if by any chance that corner of the cemetery can get developed, then we have a little bit longer life expectancy to the cemetery in general.
Do we own one or do we have to?
We'd have to contract it out. We don't own that piece of equipment. We did something similar over at the water department. We were installing a new transmission main between the Falula tanks and the Falula treatment plant right off Orange Road. And the main there that connected the two was 120 years old. So we ran ground penetrating radar along the alignment just to see what we had there. We had space next to it to install a new transmission main and all that. And it worked out pretty well. It was neat.
Okay, we can move on. Thank you. So the last item on the agenda is just, I put it on here because, excuse me, at the January meeting, we had election for the president and the clerk. And Andy had volunteered to be the clerk, but he's asked me if I would mind taking over the position again. I don't know if we need to re-vote on that, but I'd be happy to do it, seeing as how I've been doing it. He's has some personal things going on that he may not be here at meetings, and so I don't know how you want to handle it. I don't mind doing it. I've been doing it right along, so it's easier if I continue. If someone else would like to do it, either you or George, but I'd have to give you all the documentation and the emails and the.
You're just the expert.
I knew you were gonna say that. Okay, so I don't know, does that need a vote? Do we have, or can we just agree?
They probably shouldn't.
Make a motion to do it.
Okay, all right.
Good evening.
Posterity.
So we'll do it the legal way. A motion to transfer, I guess we can call it, the clerk's position to the chair. And you want to make the motion, Andy? Andy made the motion. Okay, Shelley can second the motion. All in favor? Okay. Motion passes. Okay. Okay, I don't have new items on here, but I did just want to mention to you, if that's permissible to do, two items. You can see that we now are being televised on FATV at the request of George Marajanian. I didn't know if that needed to be brought to a vote before we even considered it, but I guess not, because here we are. So we will be televised at a later date, so that our meetings will be recorded
Will you
visually.
be here or will you?
No, we'll be in this room, and it'll be the same setup that we have now. So just for your information. And then that George's reasoning for doing that was more or less because he felt that he sits on the board of FATV, number one, and he has his own show on FATV called Chess Chat, and he did email us all. I just had a question. I didn't know his reasoning behind it, but he felt that it would be good to have our meetings publicized for the public. And that way people who wanted to join our board could. And they would know that we need donations and funding. So maybe by getting the word out there via FATV, that would help us. So I guess we're gonna be doing it from now on. The other thing I just wanted to mention was Michelle had sent in her application for reappointment to the committee. It was accepted by the mayor, and it has been sent to the committee, appointments committee. I believe it's on their February 20th agenda. And then I would encourage you to be there in front of the board on the appointments committee board. If you'd like
Was it, I thought it was March fifth.
It'll go to city council, I believe, on March 5th, or did I read it wrong?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
For some reason,
Let me see, yeah.
The appointments is
it
usually,
was you who sent me the email with the dates. Maybe I misunderstood.
Your reappointment will take place as indicated below. So, February 20th, the city council agenda be brought to the appointments committee on March 5th. I think that, isn't that backwards, son?
I
Wouldn't
think it
go
goes to the city council, then appointments, then back to city council.
Oh, okay, all right, so your reappointment letter of, February 20th, city council agenda, which I anticipate will be brought to the appointments committee March 5th, 6:45. You are encouraged to attend the meeting to discuss your experience on the trustee of the burial grounds. So I would say you'll get a notification, and I would encourage you to attend.
And it's March fifth.
I believe it's March 5th, the appointments committee is March 5th. But the way she's written it here, it says, I have sent in your letter of reappointment. This is from the clerk. Oh, no, I'm sorry, this is from the mayor. I have sent in your letter of reappointment for the February 20th city council agenda. So city council agenda first,
Yeah.
then it goes to the appointments and then back for, okay. So, I would think that, would you suggest that she be at the city council?
I would suggest the second one is the
Yeah.
one you should be at, but, I mean,
March fifth.
March 5th, yes, the
Yeah.
appointments itself,
Yeah,
yes.
appointments. Okay, that's all I understand. It's on their agenda, they'll just pass it to the real appointments. Okay, yeah,
Which
got it.
one you should
okay,
definitely be at. You can go to city council, but March 5th.
okay, thank you, Miles. So yeah, I just wanted to let the rest of us know that thank you for reconsidering and, being on the board. You're a vital asset. You have a great mind, and I know you did a lot of work on that.
I just feel like having a quorum is the most important thing and can't get enough people, so.
Yeah, Thank you.
Able to continue operating.
so, if we don't have any other items on the agenda, I'll ask for an adjournment.
motion we adjourn.
Okay, the motion was made by Andy to adjourn. Anyone seconding, please? And Michelle?
Meeting is on.
Meeting adjourned at 10:20, oh no, 10:45, no, 10:40 a.m. We'll call it close enough. Close enough. Thank you, Miles.
Yes, thanks for having me, guys.
And thank you.